Bruce, it's great to connect today. Normally, I share just a bit about how each guest and I are connected, but today, would you mind sharing how we first met or kind of how we got connected recently?
Well, how we first met was you were about 3 years old, and I had you in my left arm, and you punched me in the nose because I had made a disparaging comment about your favorite college football team, the team that you would later play for. I was honored to be in the practice of law with your father, Gary, in Idaho Falls, Idaho, and he is one of the important people in my past. I regarded him as a friend and a mentor. And when I learned that his kid grew up and is doing very, very well, I just had to reach out and find that little kid who punched me in the nose. So,
So, obviously, I have no memory of that, but I am proud that I stood up for my values clear back then. So,
and well, you did. And you can hit hard at age 3. You can hit hard. So,
well, Bruce, this is so fun for me to connect. We've been able to spend some time kind of catching up, and you shared some stories about my dad, which I told you. I said, well, I learned this from Ivan Meisel. So Ivan Meisel is a journalist, worked for ESPN and On3, and he lost his son to suicide. And so Ivan wrote a book about that experience. And one of the things he says is the greatest gift you can give somebody who has lost a loved one is a new memory of that loved one. And last week we spent an hour or so, and I was just asking you questions, and you were sharing memories that you had about my dad, giving me new things. And so I'm really grateful for the time we could spend talking about my dad, who I love and miss so much. So,
well, he is to this day in heaven justifiably proud of his kid because as great a guy as he was, I think you pretty much surpassed him. So, yeah, this is a great honor for me too.
well,
Truly.
thank you, Bruce. And as I learned more about you, I thought, it'd be great to have you on the podcast and give you a chance to share the things you've learned that you most want to pass on. So as you think about your career and the things you've learned, what lessons would you most like to pass on to others?
Well, I'm grateful for this opportunity, and I really want to resist the urge to sound like I have the gray hair that I do. Um, but I spent a long career in the military and later on the bench and then in business. And the themes that keep coming home to me are those of leadership, character, and decision making. It is so very vital, and it will never not be vital in the human condition. And so, kind of developing off of some of our conversations, I thought I would start with a story that has been one of those landmark things in my life that really helped me keep my compass straight. And it's a story, I won't use names here, but it's a story of a a globally prominent hospital here in the United States who some years ago received a child who had suffered some burns, not life-threatening burns, but sufficient to be in the hospital. But through a series of human errors in the hospital, the child died. And these were avoidable errors. And these were errors that were ultimately proved fatal. But then the hospital's response to that was the thing that I found so moving. Of course, you can never ameliorate, lessen the pain of the loss of a child. But what the hospital did was so unique, especially in the modern, very litigious era we live in. The leadership of the hospital went to the home of the family without their lawyers and stood before the family and said, "We caused this. This was our fault. No one is to blame but us." And they took complete responsibility for what was obviously true. Having spent a career in the law as an attorney and as a judge, I realized that so many times, because of lawyers and insurance and competing interests, we fail to get to the right answer quickly. Because you see, in the case of this hospital, there would have been a lawsuit. It would have dragged out for years. Hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars, would have been paid out in legal fees. And they would have eventually come to the final result that was achieved that day on the family's porch. But by standing in front of the family and owning the responsibility for the error, they showed, in my judgment, great ethics. And And I think that's something we all should live by. Lawyers, of which I have been one for now 40 plus years, insurance companies, of course, would be aghast to hear me talk like that. But if more people and more business entities would simply own their mistakes publicly, what a better world this would be. Because hiding, obfuscating, defending, delay, deny, it really never makes the bad thing go away. In fact, it makes the wound worse. So I guess my point is in terms of leadership, both as a person in an environment, in a business, in the military, or a business entity, a corporate structure in society, in commerce. When you make ethical decisions, you are demonstrating leadership. People want to be led. People want to invest in leaders. We all do. It's a very human thing. We want to invest in people that we can follow. The essence of that to get people to invest in you is they've got to understand your vision and they've got to believe your vision. And the way you make that vision believable is by being credible and honest. When you stand up and say, put your ego aside and say, I screwed up, it's not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of great strength. When people see that in you as a leader, they will follow. They'll say, this is a person, this is a woman, this is a man who admits their mistakes and says, okay, what can we do to make this better? It's about character. And I just believe this, that leadership is the demonstration of character.
Yeah, I
Now,
think that I could just say something too, because I think that's interesting because I feel like for some people, they've adopted a mindset, a philosophy, a strategy of never apologize, never show any weakness.
yeah,
And there are some benefits to that, I suppose. Like there are some advantages, but I just don't think in the long run that's the path to success.
it isn't. Ask Bernie Madoff, the good people at Enron, Sam Bankman-Fried, Elizabeth Holmes. Oh, you may get away with it for a while, but the long arc of the universe tends to skew towards justice.
Yeah.
And so when you take that approach, what you're admitting is that you're afraid. It really is. I don't want to admit a mistake because then I'll show that I'm weak. No, you're not. No, you're not. You're showing that you're enough an adult and a professional to say, I made a mistake and I'm willing to learn from it and we can all get better here.
Yeah.
People will follow that. I've seen it too many times in my life, in the courtroom and the bench, looking at people with these cosmic egos, refusing to admit their mistakes as their universe. It's like you may not remember this in during the war in Iraq. Baghdad Bob. Do you remember Baghdad Bob?
No. Mm-mm.
He was the PR guy for Saddam Hussein, who was standing in front of the royal palace denying that the Americans were in Baghdad as American tanks were driving behind him. And so the joke of Baghdad Bob, it was just hilarious. And so when people take that approach of I'm not in, I've never made a mistake, I'm not wrong, and refuse it, they're fooling only themselves because the rest of the world can see what a fool you are.
Yeah.
Which gets to the point of ethics. I suspect you do a fair amount of teaching about ethics, and we talk about it a lot in society. Well, what is ethical? Well, if I may offer my 2 cents worth here, first of all, it is ethical. First of all, if you are in accord with the law, are you on the right side of the law? Second of all, does this benefit people and the planet? Conversely, it's not ethical if it hurts people and it hurts the planet. But most importantly, is it something you'd be proud to tell your mother?
Mhm.
That's what ethics are. Would you be afraid to tell your mom you did this? It's really not much more complicated than that. And I believe these two things go together. About taking responsibility is the first step in ethics. Nobody's perfect. I've been a leader in organizations. I've been the judge in the courtroom. I've made mistakes. I make mistakes every day. as the leader of a corporate entity that I co-founded. I made mistakes every day. I had to eat those mistakes every day. And if I would have taken the time to say, no, I didn't do that, I would look like a blithering idiot.
So I love your framework for what is ethical because just 2 days ago I was teaching my students about we were having a discussion about ethics and I encouraged them. I said, look, never message, never email somebody something that you wouldn't be proud of it being publicized because someday it might. You never know when you're going to get dragged into a lawsuit and you go through discovery and all of your what you thought were private messages are now out there for the public. And so what I say is imagine it's all going to be public, but I think I'm going to twist it a little bit and I'm going to use the mother test. And I'm going to say just imagine your mother is reading this, listening to you, would she be happy? And one of the a student raised their hand and they said, "Do you mean like everything, like even with our friends?" Like, and I was like, "Yes, I literally do mean everything. Every
Yeah,
conversation you have, if you're not okay with it being publicized, I would encourage you not to say that thing, not to write that thing
and that's great advice, uh, especially in this day and age where once you put it into cyberspace, it's there
forever."
until the end of time.
Yeah, yep,
But more than that, again, it makes it so much easier. It's like nobody's smart enough to be a good liar because you can never remember what lie you told, right?
right, right.
It's so much easier if you just tell the truth because then you don't have to phony something up. And the same is true with your analogy is, if you're going to put it in writing, frankly, if it's something you're going to say to another human being, is this something that you may want to walk back 24 hours from now? Or I mean, think before you keystroke, think
Yeah,
before you speak.
yeah.
And so I think character is so important. And it's, uh, and in the business world, I'm sure you talk about leadership. It's something we talk about in the military every day. It is something of an indefinable quality. You've certainly known people in your professional life, in your athletics career. You say, that person, that woman, that guy, that's a leader. And it's sort of hard to define it. You just know it when you see it. And some people are just born with charisma, of which I never got a shot of charisma. But you certainly can see it. But I do believe that one element of that is character. People, again, I want to go back to be a leader, you have to have followers, and people will follow if they're willing to invest in you. Well, they'll invest in you if they think you're a safe bet. And that comes from character. If they see you telling different stories to different people, shading the truth, they're going to run away from you because they'll say, well, wait a minute, maybe that person's dealing with me that way. So these are, I just think this whole notion of leadership, ethics, uh, and sure, in the business world, the fast buck, the glitter of gold, I get it. I get it. Well, I may not tell the whole story because I can make a lot of money if I don't have to tell them the whole story. It will come back to bite you. It always does. It never doesn't. It may not be tomorrow. It may not be the next day, but sooner or later, it will come back and bite you. So, if not for altruistic purposes, do it for pragmatic reasons. Be a person of character. Otherwise, you're going to get bit in the butt.
Yeah. Well, a couple of things it makes me think of also is I've got some research right now where we're looking at how decision frames that people adopt influence their decision. So a decision frame might be, make a decision based on a business frame, like use a business mindset and make a decision. And then we tell other people, make an ethical decision, use an ethics frame to make this decision. And when you have people presented with the same decision, but they use a decision frame that's different, one uses a business frame and one uses an ethical frame, the people using the business frame tend to lie more, tend to cheat more, and tend to be less generous. And of course, what's interesting about these two frames is the business frame and the ethics frame, they can be compatible and they should be compatible. Like we should always be making ethical business decisions. But what we find over and over again is that business students, on average, tend to be the least ethical students on campus. And part of the reason probably is because hopefully, hopefully this is not true, but I think it probably is they're being taught to think in a cost benefit, consequential utilitarian approach and just viewing every decision through that lens. And that can be an appropriate lens, the cost benefit approach. But we know that it's just so easy to start justifying behavior when we're using that lens. And I guess what is making me think is that in a business school and in society, so often we're teaching skills, we're teaching, how can you be a successful marketer? How can you, be good at accounting and finance? And we don't start with, how can you be a good person? And when we don't really develop the self first, I think we're prone to end up in a place where we have too many politicians and too many business leaders thinking only in a cost benefit frame and not willing to take accountability for any sort of mistakes or unethical behavior.
Absolutely. And I would argue in this conversation that the two lenses should be the same lens. If cost benefit is your frame, okay. If you lie, if you cheat, if you steal, you cut corners, your cost is you're going to fail.
Yeah.
You're going to fail. Not some of the time, not part of the time, every time. It may not happen tomorrow, and you may think you're going to get away with it for a while, but sooner or later it comes crashing down. Because if you build your empire on sand, that's what happens.
Yeah.
I hate to sound old here, but that's what I have seen this too many times to know that it's not true.
Yeah.
Um, and it's little things. There once upon a time in business, there was a phrase, the customer is always right. I don't know if that's taught in B school anymore. They should,
Yeah.
because surprise, surprise, when you treat customers and you say what you want, we're going to give it for you. They come back. They come back and they give you their money. Shocking concept. When you don't treat your customers with that degree of reverence, they don't come back. And you wonder why you failed.
Yeah, so much of this is like it's good business to be ethical, and even if it's not good business to be ethical, we should be ethical. But I think what one thing I'm hearing from you is you've seen in your life, like when you cut corners, you're guaranteeing that not only are you violating your own ethical code, this is also going to hurt you professionally in the
Of
long
course
run.
it is. Of course it is. You want your customers to come back. You want them to like your product or your service, and you want them to come back. The key to successful business is repeatable business. You want people coming back through the turnstile, through the door every day. Why do they do that? Well, quality, price, certainly. They also need to know that you stand by what you're creating. And when you do that, they come back.
Yeah.
So it's the ultimate in Machiavellian pragmatism. Treat people well, treat them ethically, give them a good product at a fair price, treat them well as people, and you'll put money in the bank.
Maybe last thing I'll say is just thinking about integrity and honesty and ethics. It just, our society, it just seems like far too many people are under the impression or have adopted the philosophy that you lie to get what you want. I mean, it's okay to lie. It's okay to fudge the truth. And I still remember when I was a kid, we had, I think I told you the story this last week when we were talking. I come from a large family. There's 7 kids, and my dad, well, he was an attorney, but my mom had health challenges, and I never felt like we had much money. We did fine, um, but I think between the medical bills and my dad didn't want to raise his rates. He was always he didn't want he was never trying to maximize income. So we didn't eat out a lot because we got a big family, and I remember we were traveling and we go to this hotel and we got to the hotel really early, like 8 a.m., 9 a.m. And they let us check in early and breakfast was still being served. And so all the kids were all excited to go eat breakfast. And my dad says, "No, we're not going to go eat that breakfast." And everybody's like, "Why not?" He says, "Well, we didn't pay for breakfast today. We're gonna eat the breakfast tomorrow because that's the breakfast we paid for." And all of us kids are like, "Dad, it's not a big deal. The breakfast is right there. I'm sure the hotel wouldn't mind." And he said, "Look, I would rather go pay for an expensive meal at a restaurant than take advantage of this hotel or behave unethically because I don't think that's ethical. And I love that example because to me, he was just saying, like, always tell the truth, always be ethical regardless. And that's something I'm hearing you saying as well.
Well, and part of my character and my professional beliefs came from your father. And I will tell you, the Gary that I knew was the guy who literally he would be the last guy out of the office. He did a lot of estates work, did a lot of wills and trusts for people. He would, I won't use the word agonize, but he was incredibly detail focused to make sure it was right. The product that the people came in, typically it was an estate, someone's last will, testament, trust. He knew that those people were counting on him so that when they came to the office to sign the document and to retrieve the document, take it home, put it in their safe, he knew it was the very best that he could possibly do. And here's the secret. You may not have had lots of money, but you always would have money because
Yeah.
people kept coming to see him.
Yeah.
They would tell their friends, Gary is a fine attorney. He cares about us. They would tell their friends, and they would tell their friends and tell their friends. He knew that his stock and trade was his reputation. It's cliche to say it, but the old thing is, you spend a lifetime building a reputation, and you can lose it in 2 seconds.
Yeah.
And once it's lost, hard to get it back. So the old adages, again, some of these things I heard my grandparents say that, like you, I rolled my eyes at. Hard work. Nobody ever died from hard work. Work hard, work well, work for your clients, your customers. Let them know that you're putting quality in what you're giving them. They'll keep coming back. If you think you want to live the TV lifestyle, you want to be a Kardashian and make $1 trillion before age 25, well, good luck with that. But you're going to end up in prison or worse. I mean, it's just the simple things. Treat people with respect. Treat your customers with more respect. The customer's always right. Work hard, work fair, and you'll make money.
Yeah.
It's just true.
Well, Bruce, this has been so great. I love that story that you shared about the hospital, about them taking accountability. I really appreciate these lessons. You had a lot of experience in multiple careers. I mean, that's not just me saying you're old, but but you are a little bit older than me. And like I said before the call, I'd way rather be old than dead. But you've got some hard-earned experience, and so I really appreciate your perspective on these issues that I think are so important. And I'm afraid that much of our society is not getting this right. So thank you so much for coming to the podcast today and sharing these lessons.
Well, I'm honored to be with you. Good luck to you, those who listen to you, because they are profiting themselves immeasurably by listening to what you have to say. I guess that's my last thing, is learn from people who went before you.
Yeah.
Learn from people who went before you. So, what a great opportunity to catch up with you. I'm sure I'll see you soon. And thank you so much for this opportunity to share and talk.